Alright, so we're back once again, and today I thought I'd touch on a topic that's pretty much perfectly illustrated by this game. But before that, there's a little bit of housekeeping. If you're unaware of my last video, the one about the Santa crates, Wargaming has provided an update, and the update basically states that, well, they'll refund your containers, but they have to roll back your account if you've used any of the items that you got in the containers. So, otherwise, that's pretty much all there is to say on that. Again, I'll leave you to make up your own opinion on that, but I don't really want to spend all that much more time on this topic because it's a bit boring and it's a bit played out at this point. But I just thought I'd let you know, and well, back to the game. So in this game, we're playing the Ostergötland, and I've been having a hell of a lot of fun going up the European DD line, as you've probably seen from a couple of my last videos. Games like the Oland, or ships like the Oland, shall I say. And in this game, it's a pretty heavy DD. We've got an Ostergötland, piloted by me, we've got an Ashio, we've got a Mass, we've got a Sierra Soyu, and on the enemy team, they've got a Haida, they've got a Mass, they've got an Ashio, and a Kirikazi, who is actually piloted by the Sailing Robin, and I didn't actually notice that until just right now, so this could be a very interesting game. That being said, the main thing I want to talk about in this game is panicking, and, well, how panicking can make you basically do some of the stupidest stuff I've ever seen, and how it can just basically lose you a game. Now, if you notice, the Ostergötland obviously doesn't have any smokes, and when you don't have any smokes, you don't have any real security nets, so to speak of. Now, you could say that, well, radar is effectively going to counteract smokes, but again, that level of security is still a little bit higher than not having smokes. And if we look on the minimap, you'll see that the Mass and the Haida is on our flank. And I think the first issue to point out here is the fact that our Ashio very quickly rushed into C-Cap with no real plan, no real thought about what could have happened or what could have, potentially happened. And instead, he gets spotted, panics, smokes, turns away. Now there's a couple of things this achieves that are pretty much all terrible. One, the enemy team knows where he is now, and they know that he's not going to contest the cap anytime soon, because when you smoke and turn out, the time taken to actually get back into the cap is going to be fairly significant. Number two, they basically used a smoke a consumable, which is actually relatively important in the context of a greater game. So those two things are pretty significant. And number three is they basically know a position of where the entire, or one of the strongest ships in the enemy team is, which is pretty huge. Speaking of panic though, whatever our Ashio is going to do, the enemy Ashio is going to do just as much. I get spotted right here by the Ashio, and unless you're unaware, the Ostergötland isn't the greatest at 1v1s. So what does the enemy Ashio do? I know I'm pronouncing that terribly badly, but what can we do? What does he do? Well, he immediately smokes up, because for some reason he's scared of being shot at by our Minnesota that takes 3 days to reload. The Musashi, which, although it does hit like a truck, isn't directly in the greatest line to actually hit him, or doesn't have the greatest angle to hit him. And, well, the Belfast 2 could just press radar regardless, even if he did smoke up. So in that situation, panic made him lose out on a hell of a lot of potential damage. Anyways, as things happen, I shoot the torpedoes anyways towards the smoke, because why not? I mean, I am piloting a torp boat, so there's no reason really not to. Now at this point I could push into sea, but it's just way too risky. Again, we have the Takao, and the Fiji on either flank, which means that as soon as I enter the cap and the enemy team knows it's been capped, they're just going to absolutely do everything in their power to spot me and kill me. But again, knowing where the enemy Ashio is and seeing the Takao coming this side right now means that I'm just going to send some more speculative torps. Again, these are just more zoning torps than anything else. The worst thing that could happen in this scenario is our DDs or the Minnesota, who's yellowing into the sea cap like a clown, being flanked. That's basically the worst case scenario. Now here's something, randomly stupid happens, like most war games or WoW games, the Takao dodges my torpedoes pretty effectively, but for some reason the enemy Ashio doesn't. Yeah, pretty questionable. But what that does though is gives me such a significant HP advantage that I have no problem actually farming them right now, along with her own allied Ashio. And this actually does two things. It provides me the freedom to push into this area right here, if you look on the minimap right here, because again, Takao has no threat, Ashio no threat because they're all so low, and it gives me freedom over that entire area. On the bottom flank we do seem to be winning, but again, our team does seem to be crowded around behind an island, which again isn't all that unique to World of Warships, and it's something you're probably going to see a lot more of over the coming weeks as people get holidays and the weekend warriors creep into every day. But that being said, our main goal now is not to actually get detected. At this point, that Takao is so low that the Musashi's basically going to one-shot it the next time it looks at it. So in me shooting here, it only does one bad thing. It reveals my position, and that's something I do not want to have happen right now. That's probably the worst thing that could happen, because it just provides the enemy with just the necessary knowledge to actually avoid any potential torpedoes. Take for example the Georgia right here. If the Georgia knows I'm positioned here, even if it doesn't detect me, or even if I'm not detected, if he knows I'm positioned in the way that I am, all I have to do here is reverse and completely dodge the majority of my torpedoes, or at least angle in a way that he doesn't get hit by at least 3 or 4, instead of just taking 1 or 2. And with the amount of damage these torpedoes actually do, that's not all that significant. That's like taking one relatively heavy salvo from the Musashi, whereas the Musashi's cooldown is a lot shorter than mine. But with that being said, our Minnesota's going on a Black Ops mission, trying to at least do something either with the Kansas or the Bismarck or the Georgia. Yeah, some things are just left to remain a mystery, I think. Again, right now I'm aware of the Fiji being still on that flank and not dead. What that means is that although I'd want to push around this island and, you know, get broadside torpedoes on both the Georgia and the Bismarck, I just can't, because maybe I could tank, you know, the secondaries from the Bismarck or the Georgia, but 2 or 3 salvos from the Fiji and it'd be game over extremely quickly. With that being said though, I'm in a pretty decent spot, just firing out torpedoes from this side, trying to push them back, keep control of the cap, keep control of the very, very knife edge position that we do have. Again, the Minnesota here is pushing, or is he pushing? No, at this point I think he realizes that he's in a pretty okay spot. Or, well, I say okay spot, he's heavily overextended. And I think he realizes his mistake right about now, and well, one thing about realizing a mistake too late is that, well, you're going to die anyways, which our Musashi just found out. And I think this is another situation where panicking really, well, I say panicking, but this is more of a case of just autopilot, and then panicking when you get into the situation, like the Minnesota's in right now. He sees no other option but to go straight on. And in this situation, when you're down this much HP, the idea here is just basically to ram, because in a brawling situation, you're never going to beat a German battleship, even if the Minnesota is higher tier, which it is. It's tier 9 to tier 8, but it goes down regardless because, well, the Bismarck's just a beast and it's backed up by the Georgia and the Fiji, and another victim is capitalized on due to panic. That being said though, the enemy is going to cap C and we have no real way of defending that at this point. Again, my biggest strength right now is that I'm undetected, and I'd like to keep it that way. Now, you may think the game's in a pretty desperate spot at this point, and you could say it is. But the one thing about torpedo boats is that, similar to the Minotaur, is that you want ships pushing into you. Ships pushing into you are so much easier to hit with torpedoes than ships pushing away from you. And this is basically perfect scenario of the Kansas, the Bismarck, all the 3 ships being pushed through a narrow corridor where I can just fire really tightly spread torps and hit a hell of a lot of them. Again, this is basically the perfect position, or the perfect scenario for a torpedo boat in any game state I've pretty much ever seen. I do get spotted by the carrier, which gives a little bit of spotting to the enemy, which isn't ideal, and without having smokes, it's again a little bit more awkward. But we do manage to dodge. Somehow managed to dodge the carrier, and with the help of AA and our buff, or AA buff, we make pretty short work. And we also managed to land some decent torps on the Kansas. Again, being pushed through that tight corridor is heavily useful for torpedo boats. That being said, right now, the Haida that we met earlier on in the game has somehow reappeared. Again, with the HP advantage that I have, and well, myself being around this part of the island with my team to support me, it's only really going to end one way for the Haida. We managed to avoid the torpedoes, and all is well. Now at this point you're probably thinking, well, you know, we have an extra carrier, we have an extra destroyer, we have control of the B cap, well, going to have control of the B cap. What could go wrong? What could go possibly wrong in this game, where it's basically a guaranteed win? Well, keep watching and you'll figure it out pretty soon. Because although they are leading on points, well, our team never fails to amaze me in terms of playing badly. But anyways, that's for a discussion for a little bit of a later time, as we do get the kill on the Kansas, which is already pretty low. We launched some torpedoes at the Bismarck, and unfortunately for the Bismarck, he does not seem to have Hydra activated, which means he's going to be taking quite significant damage. Not enough to kill him, but enough to do a hell of a lot of damage. And with a little bit of help, the Bismarck does go down. Now at this position, it's a bit awkward. With the Georgia positioning, going straight ahead, with the Fiji pushing to the other side of that island, it means that I can't push across B. If I push across B right here, then I'm going to die. With 2 to 3 salvos from the Fiji, which is unfortunate. Now you maybe could make an argument that I could push straight ahead in this scenario and just, you know, 1v1 the Georgia, but if that was the case, I would still die to the Fiji, and the Musashi would still be there to back it up, which would make it incredibly difficult to achieve anything really in the game. At this point though, the points are not on our side, which means I need to be spurred into action. That's why we popped the speed boost, and we're going to go for the Georgia right now. Now, fortunately, we do have a carrier still up, which means that the Georgia should go down with any luck. And that does seem to be the way the carrier is going, but as luck would have it, the Georgia does pop a heel, and it means that, well, it doesn't end all that well for us. Now at this point we want to create distance. Around like 6 kilometers from the Georgia is ideal. And then if we manage to kill the Georgia in time, then we can rotate our efforts towards the Musashi, who is relatively low and much easier to hit than the Fiji. But at this point, I'm starting to panic a little bit in and of myself, because although we've done 115k, the game is still very solidly in the enemy team's favour. Mostly just due to points, and mostly due to things that are kind of outside of my control. Again, when you play a DD, there's only so much you can do. You cannot really control 2 caps at the same time. We held control of C for as long as we basically could, and until it was just becoming untenable to push it or control it anymore, and then we had to flee and just keep doing damage as much as possible. Then we capped B, and well, we had to give that up too when the enemy team started pushing through, and well, now I can't really cap it because the Fiji is there, which means that I have to basically focus all my efforts on killing the Musashi at this point, which shouldn't be the hardest challenge. We do get a flooding and we do get a couple hits, and and I think that's a perma-flooding, although I'm not 100% sure. At this point we will get another salvo off, however unlikely. Now at this point, in case you're unaware, we do get the Confederate, but we're ready to launch another salvo at the Musashi. And at this point, you're thinking, okay, GG, game 1. We kill the Musashi with these torpedoes, the Kansas can one-shot the Fiji, and we end the game with a victory. And well, like all good fairy tales, there's a bit of a twist. We do land the torpedoes on the Musashi. Yeah, we do. We do, yeah. Yep, there's the torpedoes. We get another flooding, and he floods out, and we kill him. And well, now you're thinking, this is a guaranteed victory. There's no way we lose this game. But with the last salvo from the Musashi, the Kansas shows a little bit too much of his beautiful, beautiful side, and he gets one shot. And well, what looked like a winning game, due to panic and turning out from the Kansas, turns into a very, very, very strong defeat. The one thing here is that I basically cannot push the Fiji. I can't farm them, I can't do anything, I'm probably not going to land torpedoes even though they are incredibly fast torpedoes. The Fiji is just too maneuverable. And well, the Fiji with 26,000 HP isn't going to be farmed from by a carrier anytime soon, especially with that British AA. So, what's to take away from this game? Well, one thing would be to be calmer, don't panic, try not to panic too much, just be patient. There'll be a time later in the game where you can actually farm damage and, you know, be effective. You don't need to be active or do all your damage in the first 5 minutes of the game. I think that's the biggest takeaway from this game. And, well, games like this happen. I think that's an even bigger takeaway. You just have to be patient, click the battle button again, and, well, go at it again. But otherwise, you could just press the X, exit out of the game, and maybe play something different. The choice is yours. And well, after a game like this, I decided to press the X and go play something else. But with that being said, I hope you learned something, and I'll see you all in the next one.